12 TAC Committee. First item is public comment. Do we have any public comment? I will move on to approval of the minutes, the October 8th, 2019 minutes. I was not there, so hopefully everybody's had a chance to take a look at it. Are there any amendments to the minutes?
It looked okay to me. I
Sorry, I had one thing. On the listing of the minutes, on the minutes, we have August 13th rather than September 3rd, so we'll need to edit that.
Good catch.
Okay. Any other amendments? I will entertain a motion for approval as amended for the minutes.
I'd move.
Do I have a second? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
I'm going to abstain. I was not there.
That's fine. I wasn't either.
Do you want to?
Oh, abstain, yes.
Okay.
Next item, the 2020 Unified Planning Work Program. Public comment period was October 12th through November 10th. At the time of the agenda publication, no public comments were received.
Absolutely. So we've talked about this already, and it went out for a 30-day public comment period. As Ed noted, no public comment were received. We anticipate our major planning products for next year being the completion of the Safe Routes to School planning, the going back to the countywide bikeway plan update. We'll begin an update with our work with the Regional Transit Advisory Committee to update the Coordinated Public Transit and Human Services Transportation Plan for paratransit and human service transportation planning. And then we'll participate in the City of Lawrence ADA transition plan work that's gotten delayed for the last few years, or just the plan documentation part, the work's ongoing. And then a City of Lawrence 23rd Street corridor study, which we anticipate is still being scoped different than the East corridor, 23rd Street corridor study we just did, which was transportation only. This one will be land use, and we'll just participate in it as staff time. We don't have any financial obligation in participating in it. And then we have all of our core planning work that we expect to do around Transportation 2040 performance reporting, amendments and maintenance to the TIP as needed, our bicycle and pedestrian counts, and then our coordination to implement all of our existing multimodal plans. So that's the core of the work we anticipate doing in 2020. And so we're looking for recommendation for approval for the 2020 work plan to forward to the MPO Policy Board. Be happy to entertain any questions anybody might have.
I've had a chance to take a look at it. I think it looks great. I have no additions to it.
Can you do any more work?
No. But we can reprioritize work, always.
You can cut out Lawrence if you like.
We'll take that under consideration.
I'd go ahead and move to approve the 2020 Unified Planning Work Program.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. 2020 safety targets.
Okay. So if you recall from our last meeting, we had a lengthy discussion about these safety targets. They went out for 15-day public comment. We did not receive any public comments. And so we're back again to now recommend approval of these to the policy board. So then we can get them incorporated into T2040. I don't know if we want to go through them again, since...
So you might want to summarize for Brandon and Ed the discussion we had.
Yeah.
We had quite a bit of discussion about our target's 7.1, what, deaths or injuries?
This is fatalities.
Fatality.
Yeah.
So the question was, should we really have that as a target?
Right.
Well, it's a realistic one. You're just doing a median, right?
Right,
In
we're doing a
between
trend
them.
line.
Right. I mean, the obvious goal is 0, but that's
Right.
unrealistic.
Right, and we discussed how if we actually had 0 fatalities in 2019, this is a 5-year average, so we still wouldn't have 0 as our number.
Okay.
It would be 5.6.
Okay.
So we discussed that too. Maybe
Yeah.
we should make
Yeah.
it less than 7.
Yeah.
So
So-
Is there like a, based on like the vehicle's mile
traveled estimate?
There
in
are.
the years, they're like a
All of
rate
these are very
versus-
prescriptive for how you calculate them. They are, each one is provided, you're provided federal guidance to tell you how you are to calculate the metric that is to be assessed as part of the performance. Because these 5 particularly are all federally required metrics. However, there's not necessarily guidance in how you decide you want to set your target. The reality of that is there's nothing punitive at this time for not meeting your target. However, as we start to integrate, this is the attempt to integrate performance-based planning into the planning process, that the MPO staff, in our analysis for their long-range plan and in our analysis for transportation improvement programs, the conversation about how projects are targeting the targets, either in attempting to help them meet or not meet, is going to be part of the analysis that we're hoping to build around project selection, around conversation about resource allocation. So while a vision 0 or a desired target of 0 might be very political in that sense, it's probably not appropriate, and we had that discussion last month, that for this body to necessarily make that recommendation, there is work we can do to begin introducing this data as a conversation point in the metric around making improvements towards achieving a vision, which is safer streets for all users.
So I have a question for clarification on, so the 7.1 is set off of a trend line, and that trend line is going down, which is good.
Yep.
But let's say the trend line was not going down. Would we set our target above where we currently are, or how would that
That's up
calculus
to
go?
us.
Okay.
And so even this one, which is, this is
Right,
per
okay.
1 million BMT. So the red is a 5-year average target, and yet, so we had a higher number
Yeah.
last year, so now our
now
little
it's-
target is a little bit higher.
Right.
So,
I think some of the conversation also evolved around if you knew there were more fatalities on one area of the road or area of the county, and your group decided to take that up as a project that year, then you might think it could potentially go down.
Sure.
As compared to if the group decided not to do the project, your trend line could potentially stay or go up. I take part responsibility for the 0 thing last time. That's totally my bad.
It was.
I said part. I get it. This all makes sense.
Well, but I think part of our conversation last time, and this is indicative of how important it is, that we understand this highly technical information that we are obviously voting to, be shown to the public, but that there be some sort of component, whether that's visual or 2 or 3 bullet points, that whatever 3 members of the public, thank you for being here, actually look at this document, will know the caveat, that,
Right.
okay, if that number is going up, it's not that the city expects or wishes, that more people will die as a result of, cars on roadways. But here's how we're creating those metrics, and here's what this means. And so, obviously that's the hard part of doing this kind of work is, making the complex simple. But it would be worth putting 2 to 3 sentences in this document in some way that caveats that kind of situation.
Right.
Because Erin was completely right. It's a conversation that we all had to have to, develop our own understanding. But that same question is going to be had by anybody else who looks at this document without some sort of technical training and being in the weeds all the time.
Right.
Can we change the name instead of target?
No. No, that's in the federal regulations. We're stuck with it.
We talked about that last.
We talked about that last time
I
too.
think we tried every other
Yeah.
way to get around it.
So one additional, sorry, go ahead.
No, go.
I was gonna say, one additional thought is like, at a theoretical level, do we want to just continue a trend, or do we want to bend the curve? And if we decide that it's bend the curve, yes, it's not 0 because that's not a realistic target, but is it some sort of like a % improvement or % reduction that we could all agree upon as a target or something like that? Just posing the question. I don't have like a specific proposal to put on the table, but
There's
at a
just
high level,
there's
what's
just
the
so
goal?
much out of our control with this stuff.
Yeah.
We could take the worst area, the most crashes, and fix it, and a different area becomes, you know, there's so much driver
Right.
unknown with all this stuff.
Or even fuel prices and vehicle miles traveled in
Yeah.
terms of fuel prices impacts largely vehicle
Mhm.
miles traveled, and you look at some of the declines,
Right.
you know, in recession years and think how much of that had to do with what was actually done in terms of projects on roadways, things that we control in terms of,
Right.
even
you know.
even weather.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Weather factors into this. So
Yeah, so there's
so
things that
hard.
are outside of our control, but theoretically there are also things inside of our control. And those things, what impact do we want them to have? So, I don't know.
Yeah.
Close
The other
it.
challenge then again is this body
Yeah,
individually, like as a body, each of you probably participate in processes that represent how financial decisions are made. So we don't make decisions like we're a non-TMA, we're a transit management area, so we don't have set aside funding as an MPO to do project selection based on trying to achieve targets. So we're working with all of the jurisdictions, right, as a way to say, we are hoping you are also using this data as a way to choose what projects that you do, or you're incentivized by KDOT, like highway safety improvement funding, to do projects, or that the state is, or county, or you know, are doing projects based on their their own independent data analyses to also be in the interest of safety,
Right.
of which we are not involved on all those individual process conversations or decision-making processes. So that's kind of been challenging too for us to come to terms, I think, for even us as staff to come to terms with in terms of,
what's under our control?
yeah.
Yeah.
So-
And some of these were not even,
Douglas
like, some of
County.
these are KDOT roads, right?
Yes,
I mean,
correct.
right, and so some of these aren't even like local jurisdiction,
Correct.
you know, roads, and so, I mean, that's why I'm, you know, don't wanna like be too forceful, but, I mean, this is kind of what it is, and we are playing within somebody else's rules, and it's going to hopefully positively impact, you know, what kind of funding we will see in, you know, this region of MPO, but like, we're not really gonna be able to move the needle on a lot of these things, and, you know, at some point, we just have to say, okay, this is what we're doing to play by the rules and put out what we're required to put out through the state mandate, and we're gonna communicate to the public and to one another, like, this is what this means, and here's why we're doing it, and what we expect from it.
Yeah. Imagine trying to do this for all areas of the state with rural and urban
Yeah.
and everything, and having to set one target for safety, and it's hard.
And I think so. We're in the beginning process of what this looks like for us. So we're gonna, I think, probably continue to have these conversations and possibly evolve our process around what does it mean in terms of decision making as we set these targets and continue to track them. Eventually, possibly, there's punitive measure. You know what I mean? Or there's other processes.
There's punitive
that come
stuff for the DOT right
DOTs,
now,
yeah.
but not the MPO, thankfully.
But in the future, it could
Yeah.
impact your ability to spend money on certain projects based on whether or not they're meeting targets, which then could or could, you know, may or may not impact.
What's
that.
the statewide rate doing?
I'll have to check with you and follow up on that. I didn't hear anything back from Dave Schwartz before this meeting, but I will get our number. I mean, we sent you our numbers, but I don't remember off the top
When
of my
we
head
had
what
looked
they
at them
were.
last, we're outperforming the state.
Yeah.
So we are doing better in regards to safety than the state is.
But there's all
as a
different
whole.
kinds
But
of
there's
factors
all different
Yeah.
kinds of
into
factors
that.
in that.
So
Yeah.
it seems like distracted driving is like starting to have crashes trend up.
Yeah.
Does MPO track any safety measures or investments, you know, CIP expenditures, those sorts
So
of initiatives that are
all of
targeting
the
safety
regionally
features?
significant projects are programmed in our transportation improvement program, and that's the analysis we're doing at a really high level to inspect, like, is it bringing new geometric standards to something? Is it adding bike ped facilities? Is it, and we can make anecdotal, at this point, we can make anecdotal statements, like we believe these will impact safety positively, but we haven't done more than that.
And just to follow up on that, we will be doing these annually. So we'll have this discussion again. And
Per requirements, yeah.
Yeah.
The safety
So-
ones have to be annual.
Yeah, the safety
every
ones.
2 years.
Any other discussion?
Well, when I looked at these, I wasn't here at the last meeting, but I did look at the document, and the ones we just looked at made sense, but the next two really didn't. Didn't look like we were following the trend line like we did in the first two. It looked like we were dropping quite a bit.
Is that the one, Keith?
Yeah, that's one of them. I mean, that's 5-year average has been 26.6, and we're going for 15.
Yeah, but probably with the reduction in the 5-year average, if you drop off a
You drop off the
33 and you go down into a teen.
Yeah. So with these, the way the math worked is we then dropped like below 0, and so we then looked at it and was like, well, so this number makes sense when we were looking at the formulas.
The 5-year average is dropping, what, 5 to 7 per year? And then we're dropping at 11.
Is because we have the
Table.
19. We're missing the 19 one in there. It's not shown.
Yeah.
You want to look at the table? It's a
Yeah.
mess.
Okay. Well, you can show 'em.
Okay.
Because that 19 data point's not in there.
So is it shown as a 0, so when you average it out, it's...
Eventually, because if you have another year drop and then another year drop, now you've dropped off 2 years in the
Right.
20s or 30s and you're down into a single digit.
Oh, I already have it open. Look at that. Okay.
And the data of injuries are just reported injuries that anybody would file for any
From
particular
the
reason?
Kansas Motor Vehicle Accident Report Form, so it must
Okay.
involve a motor vehicle
Right.
and be filed through the state, or all of those from the local jurisdictions are required to be reported to the state.
Yeah, so the 19 5-year average is 20, and then 15.
So when you include 15.
Okay.
Yeah.
That makes more sense.
Yeah.
No, but on that, it's pretty cool that over the last 10 years, we went from 83 down to 21.
Yeah.
And so, but if you were asked the question, could you say, what were the top 2 or 3 things that changed? Do we have more bike lanes? Did the speed limit change anywhere? Were there 2 or 3 factors that really stood out that make us drop from an 80 to a 60?
We
Yeah.
haven't done that sort of
That's awesome.
causation analysis. I mean, I imagine the state has attributed a lot of work that they've done around stuff.
probably adding all kinds of the practical improvements statewide
Even just
and that
vehicle
sort of thing.
safety improvements.
Yeah.
That's huge.
Yeah.
And your ridership has increased, I'm sure, steadily. If you had a graph that showed actually going down and then a graph showing how many people are riding a bike or
Yeah.
commuting, that is going up, so that even adds to it. That what you're doing is really good.
And there was another category in that, I don't remember what it was titled, but it was kind of the same thing. It looked like we dropped it too much, but
Was it the next one with the BMT?
might have been, yeah.
So probably be the.
Yeah, we don't have that.
Ooh.
You go to 0.
Yeah. Is it 1.7? 7.1?
So why is 2019 not in there then, in the table?
Because so 2019 is a projection. 2018 is our last real number,
Okay.
and then we're using 2019 to help us project 2020.
Should that be added to the table since there's
Well,
a gap between, like, and just have an asterisk that says
Yeah.
projected or something? Because it jumps from 2018 to 2020.
Yeah.
Would we want to make it a different color, maybe?
We could.
Yeah.
Like a projected? Yeah,
That would make sense.
we could do that. I think we had that at one point, and then like 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And then this time we were like, oh, maybe not. So, but okay, projected.
So Keith, another thing that we had a conversation with Chad when we looked at this last month was the concern over when we break it down by system, level in terms of spatial area, like for the way we report it, not in this for like this summary report, but the way we report it in T2040, it basically says by jurisdiction. However, if you look at the actual crashes, like for example, that are attributed to Douglas County, many of them are not on your roadways. They might be in your geographical area, but they're attributed to who owns the facility. And so we've kind of committed to exploring that in terms of, we knew we couldn't do it for this intent and for this intent because it's quite a lot of GIS work that needs to be done to kind of see how we can filter that, but to committed to looking in the future to see how we can process that based on, show it by geographical area, but also show it by ownership of the facility. And so that's something Chad kind of pointed out to us that we thought was a good function, but the problem is the way the data comes to us, there's some limitations.
So you guys, you're getting the accident reports, or you're getting the KDOT's database of accident reports.
Correct, what they export to us, and then
So
we're
you would have
cleaning
to
that
go
up
through
somewhat.
and determine for everyone the exact location, who's your.
And there's some, I mean, I think there's the challenge becomes on intersections when there's two facilities and some of that. And so I think there's probably some ways we could do it at a high level to say with like a, reasonable, level of accuracy. We know like a percentage, maybe, just to kind of have an under idea, because I think part of it is how much can we really impact it if it's, the state has a state process for, the local consult for how they're selecting projects that involves multiple things, that safety is one component of that. But how do we really weigh into that story if really a high percentage is on a certain set of facility?
Right. I would think, even if you don't break it down by jurisdiction, but just the rural versus urban would be beneficial.
Helpful, yeah.
Because, there's so many different factors. Your crash numbers and severity and all that are going to be different in the two, rural versus urban. Rural's going to have fewer accidents, but more severe accidents, that type of thing. And that might point to, if the trend is the rural is really getting a lot more severe or something, that might tell you something.
Right.
Or if the urban is more, bicycle crashes is the issue, whatever.
So I think this is some of the stuff that I think we'll need to look at as we kind of continue to do performance, to understand what it actually means in terms of, to understand how do we give all of our project sponsors the information they need to really dive in to understand that at a county-wide level, how we can continue to make progress.
And then this is non-motorized.
That it?
Yeah.
Okay. Any other discussion? If not, I'll entertain a motion to recommend approval of the 2020 safety targets.
What did we decide on Leslie's idea about?
Thanks, Chuck.
Kind of
No.
disclaimer.
Well, there's that blurb that you guys already have on the top of each of the sheets. So I'm wondering if there's something in that sentence, the MPO set our own countywide targets, maybe ... like, I don't know that it's worth our time to wordsmith it here, but, like, the targets are based on, obviously we have 5-year rolling average in there, but
Trend lines.
or, full with it, somehow acknowledging that it's not zero because, or like somehow taking that and acknowledging it.
Or like we desire increase safety past our targets, but our targets are based on what we believe are realistic trend lines based on our historical.
That's great.
Something.
That's,
Okay.
yes, that sounds great. Yes.
Are you moving?
Satisfied.
I don't know.
Okay, we can.
Okay, cool. And then adding the 2019 to the two tables that Keith noticed, the last two performance measures.
We
I
can
think
add it
the
to all
others
of them.
included it.
Yeah.
Just so it's
Okay.
consistent.
Yeah.
As amended.
Yeah.
I'll second.
Now, we want to have that to start or have it on each page, a particular one? I would think just at the start would probably be fine.
Well, you kind of repeat at the,
Yeah.
whatever format you
Yeah.
guys want to use, but you
Yeah.
kind of repeat the same deal as
We can put it on all of them.
agenda.
Okay.
Okay, sounds good. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Who made the motion? Sorry.
I'm assuming Leslie's
Let's read
motion.
the
Well, we'll go with Leslie at this
Okay.
point,
Okay.
as
All right.
amended with the 2 amendments to
Okay.
that.
I'll second.
Okay, all the, we
can
have a
let
motion.
Aaron second it, because he was against it last time.
We have a second, regardless, one way or the other, to recommend approval of the 2020 safety targets as amended. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Safe routes to school planning.
Okay. We have been doing a lot of work on the Safe Routes to School planning for both Lawrence and Baldwin City and Eudora. And on Thursday, this Thursday, we're going to be having an open house at the Douglas County Fairgrounds for Lawrence. We are going to be asking parents and community members about different strategies, Safe Routes to School strategies that they are currently doing, what they'd like to do, and for input on some revised routes and some other distinctions between different types of roadways. And we did a parent survey. We ended up with how many surveys?
226 responses.
That's good.
Yeah.
So we're processing those. And in Eudora, we tabled at their parent-teacher conferences and had some very good conversations with parents. We ended up with 103 survey responses. Yeah.
Good.
Okay, good job, guys.
And we did the same thing in Baldwin and tabled at their parent-teacher conferences and ended up with
42.
42.
And that's still good. That's good for Baldwin. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not bad. So we actually decided to leave those surveys open for a little bit longer because we're busy with the open house thing. We're probably not going to even get to analysis for a while, and just in an effort to increase survey responses. So I did email the superintendents of both of the school districts, but if you want me to send you the same information and link and stuff,
That would be
I
nice.
can email that to both of you.
Good.
That's fine.
Good.
Yes, great.
People were generally interested when
Yeah.
we were
They
tabling,
really
so it was
were.
good. They were supportive of what
It's a
we were
really good
doing,
idea
even
to
if they
do the
didn't
parent-teacher
have
conference. I know I've told you that, but like, great idea. It's
Yeah.
awesome
Mhm.
to do this.
Yeah.
Yeah, the parent-teacher conferences.
Mhm.
Yep. Meet them where they are.
I really walked it over to them.
tracking them down the hall. Don't go. We're sitting here.
Yeah.
And then we're on schedule to have this wrapped up spring, summer, is that
Yeah,
right?
spring. So the
Okay.
plan is to work on writing the plan in the winter time
Okay.
and then try to wrap it up in the spring
Okay.
for all 3 plans.
Very good.
So there are 3 individual plans and then.
Correct.
Okay.
What level of engagement do you have with each of the respective school districts?
It's different for each one. So for Lawrence, we have a couple of people from the school district itself serving on our staff team. And as far as engagement, we've sent it out through all sorts of methods and then are trying to invite everybody to come to the open house.
And they've done some
I think-
targeted work in the schools around different parts of the function of the work that we're doing.
Right. I think because there's a longer history in Lawrence, the school district has some programmatic things that are already in place that are going on, like the walk and bike to school day that have been happening for several years. They've got the bike lessons education in the classroom and stuff. So they're bought in a way that maybe the other school districts aren't yet. But the superintendents are involved in keeping things rolling.
Great.
Okay, our next meeting will be December 3rd, 2019.
If it's needed. We don't have any items scheduled yet for an agenda, like any pending work, so this might be the last time we meet this year. But I did want to say this also might be Chuck's last meeting with us.
December 3rd.
Yeah. So Chuck is leaving the city to go to Smithville, Missouri. As Public Works.
Go to where?
So
Well, then maybe we should meet December 3rd, so today's not his last meeting.
That's right.
Does this mean I get to get you at Mark too for
Yeah.
stuff?
yeah.
So I'm winning in both of these because I get Scottsdale and Chuck, so that's cool. Awesome.
But I'll be on the Missouri side.
That's okay. We like our Missouri friends. So
Alright.
I'm
That's good. I need some familiar faces.
yeah.
And Chuck.
Yeah.
Good.
And you can't ask her for money anymore.
I know.
So I would have to-
But you can introduce me to my Missouri counterparts.
I can do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have to get to know 'em.
One other thing is we have moved to this new agenda format, so,
Oh, I compass.
yes, it's an iCompass.
I like it.
So we have all this information here.
Is this consistent with all, like how the city's doing all their stuff?
Correct. Cool.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Well,
we're
congratulations,
transitioning
Chuck.
to that.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good luck.
Yes.
You'll be missed. Okay, any other business? I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
I'll adjourn.
Well, I will say thank you to everybody that came to local consult last week, so thank you for being part of that process.
Did you have a good turnout for that?
Yes, I believe so. And then I didn't see anybody from this area at the Kansas City one, but.
Did
Oh.
anybody mention the SLT at the Kansas City one?
Good question.
Not that I'm aware of. I was asked in the group that I was in, but as a Lawrence resident and working, I had two different, responsibilities there. So, I don't know in my little group, but in the readout, I didn't hear anything about that.
Okay.
The bigger impact for you all was going to the Topeka one. So,
Okay,
yeah, but they were all really well attended.
good.
And then our cost share announcements came out as well. Cost share program stuff. So,
When do TA announcements?
December.
I don't know when they're supposed to be. I know that they just closed because it happens right across the cubicle for me. So I know it's a well-received program, but I don't know yet. I know they're doing visits in January-ish.
Okay.
Good
I
time
thought
for
they
that.
had December for it, and they were only gonna visit the ones that are probably new, because they were gonna
Yeah.
skip us, and they were gonna skip a lot of
Yeah,
others.
because they've seen a lot of
Yeah.
the projects in this area, but yeah, so.
So hopefully they can get it done in December. It'd be
Yeah,
nice,
December, so.
get another round.
Prison. So, good
Just
luck.
it. Yep.
Oh,
Do I have a second for adjournment?
I'll second.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.